IEC, the Independent Electoral Commission, releasing and unpacking the findings of its election-related surveys looking at gauging levels of public perceptions and trends in the attitudes and interests of South African voters. We'll be chatting to Mamabolo. He's the IEC's Chief Electoral Officer. In terms of this electoral democracy and voting, these studies were conducted by the Human Science Research Council, that's the HSRC, and will be presented at today's public seminar. Now, in part, it is intended to create a dialogue between the IEC and other stakeholders to reflect on the broader implications of the findings on the future of South Africa's electoral democracy. Sai Mamabolo, as I say, is our guest. He's the IEC's Chief Electoral Officer. Sai, good to have you. Thanks so much for being our guest.
Good morning and greetings to your viewers. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit more about the research and the survey that you're releasing today. What made it happen?
Well, those who came before us already in about 2000 conceptualized two primary studies. One was what they call a voter participation survey, and the other was the voter satisfaction survey, which was taken in a select number of voting stations on voting day. So since then, we've been taking, or rather doing this survey through our partner, the Human Researchers Council. And we are tomorrow presenting them as a curated longitudinal study, in a sense, giving us some indication of what people's perceptions of electoral democracy are since we started in 2000. So we are observing longitudinal trends about, for instance, whether people think there are barriers to registering as voters. And if there are, what are those barriers and how to overcome them? Whether people are intent on voting ahead of election, and if they are not willing to be voting, what then are the factors that inform that disposition? And then as regards the voter satisfaction survey, did you feel free to make your own choice? Were you influenced, and if so, by who? Political parties, family members, and so on. Was it safe to go to a voting station? Do you think your ballot was a secret? And all those types of things. So you can discern trends over a 20-year horizon. That's what we will be presenting to political parties, research bodies, as well as political commentators tomorrow.
Yeah, obviously this is something that is still to be released, but are you able to give us just a little bit of the findings? I mean, just in terms of the psyche of South Africans, are they satisfied? Not any details, obviously, but just in general, some of the findings and what they speak to.
Well, some of the key findings are that public institutions as a whole are losing their ratings, of course, including the IC, because the IC tracks all other public institutions. We remain extremely high in relation to other public institutions, but there's been a discernible decline in so, you know, and the other thing that we observe is that economic circumstances of people at any particular time influence their perceptions about the efficacy of the state machinery. And then in respect of the quality of voting services offered at the voting station, we rate, again, very high, between 7 out of 10 in relation to the following factors: safety, secrecy of the ballot, and safety of people at voting station, and whether people were influenced. So relatively very high. Of course, there are the fact that our ratings are reducing, as does the rest of the institutions within the state machinery, is a matter of concern. It's something that we will intervene through public education ahead of next year's, ahead of the 2024 election to ameliorate.
What is it behind this? I mean, what is at the heart of this? Do you believe that South Africans are not necessarily? I mean, when we look at voter turnout, that is always a worry, and it just seems to constantly be declining. What's going on? I mean, why are South Africans, particularly the youth, not satisfied? What's the problem?
I think it's a myriad of factors, related and unrelated. One, it's the economic opportunities that young people are exposed to. They are limited, and not everybody is economically active as they should, especially at the primary stage of their life as a young person. So that tends to influence their perceptions about the state and the various institutions that are found in the state. But you see, what we need to be able to achieve is to say, whatever your economic circumstance, whatever your employment or otherwise status, the answer is to participate, and hopefully by so doing, make a choice that will better uplift you socially, economically, and otherwise. So the answer is not to stay away from the ballot box, but to participate more, and in so doing, hopefully make a choice that better represents your political, economic, and social aspirations.
There's a general decline in terms of the public's trust in political institutions and South Africa's democracy. I imagine this is a concern for you.
It is a concern, which is why we're sharing this curated research findings with political parties, research institutions, and by so doing, with the public broadly. And it is not an end in itself, because this must inform our public engagement process, our stakeholder management processes, and our public education processes, so as to ameliorate those trends and get them to reverse.
And this is something that we need to take very, very seriously, because, I mean, when it comes to the electoral system in South Africa, trust is a major tool in our democracy. And I think if we start seeing that going down, then we're leading to major problems. Is that, trusting political institutions, trusting an institution like yourselves, the Independent Electoral Commission, is of utmost importance. So even though we're finding that there is perhaps a little bit of trust, bit of a trust deficit in political institutions, how are people viewing the IEC? What is the feeling towards the organization?
Well, the IEC still enjoys high ratings from public perception point of view. That does not mean the challenges that people observe and so on from time to time. But here's the point, Leon. A voting station is the prism through which people look at the IEC. So we'll do well to uplift our performance at the level of the voting station. Because once people are satisfied at that level, they will always give us high ratings. So our greatest challenge, therefore, is to ensure that our staff is well trained, our facilities have all the amenities that are necessary for a decent electoral experience for people at the voting station, that our officials know the procedures and the law, and there's a customer-centric attitude on the part of our staff. If we master those basic things, and that our logistics are also in order, there are no shortages of ballot papers and so on. If we master those basic elements, that's the answer, really, to ratings that we will get from the voting public. So as much as you may intervene through marketing strategies, that can only go so far. People's experiences of the voting process and the quality thereof is what you are required to be working on.
Yeah. And this leaves you as the IEC in a bit of a difficult position, because we do know that there's obviously the issue of a very different voting system in 2024. Now, I mean, the reality is that there is the talk that there need to be amendments to the Electoral Act to allow for independents to contest elections. However, this has now been pushed for the decision in December. That's 2 months away. It's already been asked for a longer period. Now it's been moved to December. And there's views that this is also going to be asked for another delay. This puts pressure on you as the IEC to pull off these elections come 2024, because, I mean, from what I understand, you need at least 18 months to pull through and put an election together. This is a tough situation for you. It really is. I mean, how are you feeling right now in terms of these elections in 2024 with this whole electoral process hanging over your heads?
Well, the all indications and public commentary indicates that 2024 will be a watershed election. And to that extent, it has to be a well-run, a well-organized election. But a well-run and a well-organized election requires time, which is why we've been consulting with political parties, we've been talking to civil society organizations saying we need to find a way of concluding the amendments to the Electoral Act so that there is certainty around the electoral system, at least for 2024. Because we are unable to escalate our preparations for 2024 unless the electoral system is done and sealed. Because you've got to write new IT programs, you've got to write new business applications, you need to train staff on the new system, you need to mount a huge public education campaign to inform citizens about the implications of the new electoral system. That will require time. So any delay that will arise beyond December this year is beginning to compromise the quality of that election.
And this is the reality. And I understand that, because, I mean, your job, and I'm sure South Africans are fully aware of it, is to manage elections, no affiliation to any political party, to remain completely neutral, but to put the elections together, from printing of ballot papers, IT systems, you name it. So if this decision isn't made by latest, well, obviously there's December, that's what they've said is going to happen, but for it to happen, I mean, say it happens in January, that's the cutoff. I mean, we need this to happen as a matter of urgency. And if that doesn't happen, I mean, from what you're feeling, I mean, do you sense that this is going to go through, that in fact we will have a decision in time? If not, where does that leave the 2024 elections?
Well, I think that the political parties that we've been talking to have committed to realizing the date of December 2022. We have a sense that everybody is committed to working towards that date. It is things that may ensue following the adoption of the bill that may put the process at risk, i.e. perhaps a court challenge, and so on. Now, were that to materialize, it induces even longer periods of uncertainty and eating into the time available for the IEC to work on systems, train people, mount public education, and so on. And all we're saying is that we do not have a preference for one or the other electoral system. We think that eminently belongs to Parliament for determination. But whatever system is made, the consideration must be given to the fact that there are operational implications of a significant nature that the IEC would have to contend with following the passing of the electoral system. And the limited time there is, it compromises the quality of an election ultimately. That's the point that the Commission wishes to place for attention before all South Africans.
Well, Si, we hope we see this. This is since 2020, we saw that ruling coming through from the Constitutional Court. That was in June 2020, giving 2 years for the Electoral Act to be fixed and to change it so that independent candidates can happen. That's been pushed from January. Obviously, we heard the minister saying that'll be pushed to December. And we wait and see if it happens so that we can keep the integrity alive of our electoral system. Good to have you, Si. Where can we get this report when it's launched? You say you're launching it tomorrow. It'll be on your website.
It will be available on our website, elections.org.za.
Always a pleasure speaking to you. Si Mamabolo, thanks very, very much for being our guest here on Morning Live. Of course, Si is the Chief Electoral Officer of the Independent Electoral Commission.